Welcome to TechSHRM, a club at New York University Tandon School of Engineering, where we bring top industry experts to discuss all things on people analytics. Our goal is to provide a platform for students and professional members of TechSHRM Club to learn from and engage with thought leaders in the field of human resources, technology, and analytics. Today, we are excited to have Geetanjali Gomal joining us. Geetanjali Gomal is a head HR Global Commercial Strategy Organization and Johnson Business Development at Johnson & Johnson, where she has gained extensive experience in the field of people analytics. Geetanjali is an economist turned into a people analytics leader and played important roles in organizations like MasterCard and Monk. So get ready to be inspired and educated as we dive into the world of people analytics with Geetanjali. Let's get started. Good afternoon, Geetanjali. Thanks for joining us. A warm welcome to this podcast series as a people analytics expert. And a huge thanks for agreeing to share your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Venkat, so much. I'm really glad and thankful to have the invitation to share a little bit more with your fellow students and listeners to the podcast, and also thank you for the kind introduction.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So Geetanjali, let's dive into our questions. So the first question is like it gives me more interest to get your answer on this question. So different people have different paths to reach where they are today. Similarly, can you explain briefly on your journey from being an economist to people leader? How did it happen? Like, what are your pros and cons? How enjoying are you with your advantage of being an economist and playing a role as a people analytics leader today?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question to kick things off. I think for me, I always believe in the journey as important as the destination, right? So you have to enjoy that. So for me, I loved economics. I loved using theory and math together and trying to figure out like real world problems with it. So economics was always a perfect fit. And, as I started my career, I went into that field thinking, hey, I want to see how do concepts and I'm going to be, throwing out these economics terms that I loved working on, like how do marginal returns, how does this really play out in the real world, or opportunity cost, like how do people navigate through all this? And I used to love doing that. And I was very fortunate that I had a chance to take that learning and take it into the business world, where we were looking at problems such as, hey, if economic conditions change a certain way in the short term, what could be the impact on customer growth, on demand for our service or product? And then how does that differ if there is a more longer term structural change, right? So like starting with those kind of problems, I very quickly realized that once you have like that, those basic tools to break down a lot of information to answer questions in a very real and actionable way, you can apply it anywhere, right? Like the world is your oyster then. So you can really apply it to any field as long as you have that hunger and humility to want to learn about things that maybe you don't know a lot about, and then bring the skills that you have. So I think that background and that grounding in problem solving, in doing research, in thinking about why when you start looking at a problem in front of you, that has really been helpful to me throughout my career. So from there, as I transitioned into people analytics, which was a relatively new field when I first went into it, and I always thought that, well, I wonder how, is there science and data involved in how we think about people and, careers and movement? And there is, but I didn't know that, right? But I was like, hey, maybe there's more to learn about this. Maybe there's something I can add. And so I think that really lent itself really well into then transitioning into that space and saying, okay, well, if we think people might leave an organization, why, right? Like, can we figure out those drivers? If we can, then what can we do about it? Can we use data in the patterns that we see in data and actually interpret them to understand that? So I think that way of looking at things, creating assumptions, then challenging them, looking for answers in a lot of complex information that's not perfect. I think that is something that started with an economics background and then lent itself to the rest of my career.
That's a very great answer. It's kind of something like as Sheldon in Big Bang Theory say, you have a working experience of the entire business model, like how the industry reacts to it, and you've started shaping human resources, the power of analytics. That's really great. Like so, it takes to our next question. Being an industry leader in people analytics, so can you throw us some light on how important the existence of a role people analyst or HR analyst, in a large corporation like Johnson and Johnson, and also I believe like you can add more value to this in terms of the business perspective, being an economist as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, the short answer is it's extremely important. And the long answer behind that is, so whether, an organization is large or small, but especially for larger organizations, um, they have like a great amount of data, right? So there's a lot of data, there's a lot of information, but I always say that information is not automatically insight, right? Someone has to work with it, has to be able to um, answer questions using that information to then turn it into insight that can drive business decisions, right? Or help people make business decisions. So I think it's very important. It's an extremely important role because it's the role where we're taking all of this data that's out there and then harnessing it in the right way, harnessing the power of that data, interpreting what it's telling us, and then in a very timely way, being able to highlight that to the key decision makers. And I think why that is so interesting in the space of people analytics is because that's how like businesses have been working from a business perspective forever, right? If you think about marketing or finance, right? Like these are things, or sales, people rely on a lot of data. They use that, they make forecasts, they look at scenarios, and that's how they run their business. But being able to think about things in a similar way on the people side and saying, hey, like, are we missing something here? Is there an opportunity to increase our retention and engagement because of the way we onboard? And can we use the data points that we have to really understand that? I think that's so critical. And having that people analytics capability, and that capability, by the way, can be used in a lot of different ways, right? Like you can have people who are deep like data science experts, and that's the area they want to go. They want to create all these really cool models and organizational networks and do that. There can be people who want to lean in more on interpreting insights and almost consulting with the business from a talent analytics and insights perspective. And basically like everything in between. There's everything from creating data and information products to actually being more of like in a consultant role that you can have in this space. And I can tell you that the importance of this goes beyond even roles and departments. And what I mean by that is, if I look at my own career, I started out as an economist. I went into people analytics that many years. Now I'm actually leveraging people analytics, but in a very close to business partnering role. So I'm actually bringing all of that HR analytics background that I have and saying, okay, now that I'm so close to the business, like how can this impact real outcomes? How can it help them, work through the everyday better?
That's great. As your short answer coincided, it's very important. Thanks for the detailed explanation of how important it is and like where does it play a role. Yeah, we can also observe things like we've seen the great resignation and the attrition rates, and as you highly stressed on the impact of the paradigm shift from capital centric economy to an people centric, human centric economy. We can also see a lot of McKinsey, Deloitte, and BCG reports popping out on like the importance of tackling the problems within the company and retaining the resources and increasing the acceptance rate. So thanks for giving us detailed light on that. So taking the questions to a more personalized and sector. I'm more curious on asking you, being where you are now. So, what are the two main skills you tell to the younger you while you were starting out the career to land at the place you are? Probably like that can speed up your journey. That can obviously be helpful to the people who are hearing this. So, can you just tell us something about that?
Yeah, probably a lot more than just two, but I'll stick to two. Um, I think one of the things that is very important, and it's very easy to miss, because when you first start out, especially when you're coming out of whatever program you're doing in school. Like, I got a master's in economics, and I was so excited about all of these really cool models that we built in econometrics and wanting to apply all of them into the real world. That was kind of my first go-to thought is, oh, this in this situation, I bet if I use this model, that would be amazing. And it might be in certain situations, but the first step that sometimes you don't learn in school, because you're kind of working with like cleaner data sets, is that data is very messy. And I would say a very core, very important, and not as like fun sounding steps, a lot of people don't talk about it, is just like spending the time to like love the data enough that you spend time doing a lot of like quality control, like cleaning the data, understanding that real world data is very messy, it's imperfect. You just building that sense of knowing that looks like an outlier. Why did this pattern change this way? Or if there's missing data, is probably easy to capture, but there's like other messiness that you can see in it. That is so important, because in a real world setting, right, you can say, oh, we created this amazing algorithm in Python, and here's the result. And if someone on the other end, a leader who's going to make a decision, looks at it and says, I can tell that answer makes no sense, because our growth rate has been at this level. How did it jump 20% now? And if that's the real answer and you've done your homework, you're fine. But that just stresses to you the importance of knowing the data and making sure it's clean is critical. And I would like tell myself at my beginning of my career, and I would tell everyone, who's earlier in their career, same thing. And the other also is kind of taking that forward then to presentation and visualization of the data, telling the story around it. I think that is so important. And I think, again, many times we don't think about it so much up front, because we think, hey, like, this is really cool, and we've done this amazing work. But being able to take large amounts of information or something that's very complex, and then distilling it into a couple of slides or a one really interesting visualization, right, that you see, and you instantly, anyone who knows nothing about data and analytics can look at that and tell, this is what's happening here. I think that is invaluable.
That's great. So the key is like we should understand the complex data, and our next skill is to jot it down to people who cannot understand the complex data in a simpler terms, and which can drive into actionable insights. That's one of the great skills, to be honest. So diving into our last question, I don't want to take much of your time. So can you tell us, like, you entered people analytics as a senior position with the previous experience in economics. So can you also tell, like, do people analytics is only for senior professionals, or people who are in the early stage of careers have a fair chance too?
Yeah, I think now, because it's a much more bigger, established, growing field, right? I think there are a lot more opportunities early in career as well. Absolutely, I would say yes, there are. Perhaps like some years ago, like maybe when I was starting, there were a little bit fewer, because again, it was one of those spaces where like people analytics, there weren't like programs around people analytics. Today there are, right? Like you can actually go to school and get either sometimes it could be taking a course, or it could be getting an actual certification in people analytics. Like, it's not something that people have never heard of and will say, what is that? And earlier it was like, hey, it wasn't really an established field, and so you had people who had several years of analytics experience in a different field, maybe trying that as like a next step in their career. Now you actually can get, like I said, education for it. Even if even if you don't get anything formal, like there's like work you can do on online forums, right? You can take enough courses around people analytics that give you an edge. And because the teams have also grown as the field has grown in various companies, they have openings at every level of your career, right? So you have not just a small like 3 or 4 person team like how it started out everywhere, to now you have large multi-layered teams where you have people who are entering in as data scientists, like straight out, from school, from earlier in career, or analysts, right? In terms of like understanding how do you create the right dashboards and reports and visualizations, or in spaces where maybe you're focused more on survey and analysis. So a lot of people with IO backgrounds, as sometimes as their first role, are also going in there. So there's, I think, because of the proliferation of the field of work around the globe and various companies, there's a lot more opportunities now at all levels of the career.
Okay, I'll take it as in yes. I always say people to
Basically.
get into people analytics. Thanks for detailing that. Like thanks for all your time on answering our questions. To end this, can you share some of your suggestions for the students who are listening to this, who are aspiring to get into people analytics roles?
Yeah, first I would say great choice. You guys are already showing that you're interested in a very important space, because I think ultimately there's a lot of satisfaction in this work, in seeing that the outcomes of your work, right, when used well, that they can make so much positive difference to the world of work, and how people experience it. So I think that's amazing. My other like little piece of advice there would be, maybe kind of reiterating what I said earlier, is always seek to simplify, right? You're going to have at your disposal a lot of complex information, but your goal should be how to simplify that, so that can lead to some concrete action and positive outcomes. And then the third thing would be that always ask yourself why. I think a cardinal rule in people analytics is that we shouldn't do things just because we can, right? We should always think about, is this the right thing to do? What will we do when we know the answer to this question, and how will it create positive impact for people? So it's very important to ask yourself those questions.
Thank you for the great suggestions. I would look forward to me personally incorporating it in my own career. I believe our listeners will also be paying more attention to your valuable suggestions. So thank you so much, Geetanjali, for sharing your amazing knowledge with us. So thank you all for joining us for another episode of TechSHRM Club at New York University Tandem School of Engineering. We hope you all enjoyed our discussion with Geetanjali on the topic of people analytics. So Geetanjali provided us with valuable insights and practical tips on how to use data to make informed decisions in the field of human resources. We are grateful to have such a knowledgeable and experienced guest join us today. So we hope you all found this episode informative and inspiring. I found it inspiring, to be honest. And I'd like to mention special thanks to Sansap, the president of TechSHRM Club, Harvard, the vice president of technology at TechSHRM Club, and our other e-board members and our faculty advisor, Professor Harold Kaufman. Thank you for tuning in, and we would look forward to bring you more engaging and informative content in the future. Thank you.